So we turn now to the principal business of the evening, which is the presentation of the Debs Award to James Boland. And I asked my good friend Keith Mestrich if he would be willing to present the award, and he was more than enthusiastic about doing so. So let me say a few words about Keith and then turn it over to him to make the presentation. I've known Keith for a number of years in a lot of different capacities for both him and me. The first time I met him, he was an organizer for our union, and we were running a number of campaigns together and organizing drives. And I was struck by his intellect and by his dedication and by his willingness to innovate against the trends and tides of what most organizers were thinking was important and essential to organizing in that period of time about 25 years ago. And over the course of that quarter of a century down to today, I've never seen him stop with those sorts of initiatives. In fact, I've seen him push them further and further to the edge of where they need to be. And most recently, Keith and I have worked together at the Amalgamated Bank, the Union Bank founded by Sidney Hillman and the clothing workers in the 1920s, and the bank that today continues to be a premier financial institution for working people. In my capacity as chairman of the bank, I was present at the first Occupy demonstration in New York, and we had a branch bank a few blocks away, and I'm confident that I was the only chairman of the board of a bank to be at the Occupy demonstration and was in favor of it, and the only one to put a sign in the window a few blocks away saying, "We are the back of the Occupy movement." Since then, Keith has assumed the position as president and CEO, and we have done some extraordinary things. I'm confident that we are the only bank that most recently raised the wages of all of the persons who work at the bank to at least $15 an hour. And we've shown the rest of the bank in that spirit, we bought some poster time on the New York subway system and ran some posters in thousands of subway cars running around New York in favor of a living wage for all working people. And about 3 weeks into the 4-week buy on that, the MTA decided that that was too controversial for New York subway riders to read and tore them all down. And that $100,000 media buy resulted in about $6 million of profitable publicity, not just for the bank, but for that entire motion to guarantee that. So I could say a good deal more, but I'll just simply say this. There's no one who's more focused and more dedicated, who's the chair, the president and CEO of a bank. Now that's a limited threshold, I'll guarantee you. Who's fighting for working people every day. My good friend, Keith Mestrich.
So I'm sitting over here tonight, and I'm seeing everybody on this side of the table, gentlemen in the end, come up and talk about how it's a bad thing to have a 3-page speech. And then I go 1, 2, 3. But it's big time, so I'm going to do that. As Noel said, he and I really have known each other 25 years, and we've seen a lot together. And all of you get to know Noel in the wonderful capacity that he serves as being the president of the Debs Foundation, and that's a terrific thing. I don't know that all of you know exactly how much this fine gentleman does. Not only is he the head of the Chicago Midwest Joint Board of Workers United, but he serves in the capacity as the president of the Workers United Conference, a nationwide conference of workers in the garment and textile industries, distribution centers, retail, and laundry industry. He's a vice president of the Service Employees International Union, serves on that union's international executive board, and in the capacity of fighting all the political campaigns and working with that union in fights across the country. He's the chairman of the board of the Amalgamated Life Insurance Company, a company that was founded at the same time that our bank was, to be able to provide group life insurance and health insurance benefits to workers. And I'm incredibly proud to serve with him in his capacity as the chairman of the board of the bank, and I'm very pleased to be a part of the Amalgamated Bank of New York. where Noel not only serves as the chairman of the board of the bank, but is the head of our trust committee. And for many years now, decades, Noel has led the fight that we do at the bank to hold companies accountable as shareholders of those companies, to make sure that they treat workers right, that they respect the environment, and that they uphold the highest standards of corporate governance. Noel is one of my great inspirations. He's been a mentor to me, and I'm very proud to call him my friend. I'll tell you a little story about that $15 an hour minimum wage that we did in the bank. There's a dirty little secret in this country, and that's that the wealthiest industry in the country is the financial services industry. Everybody thinks about the great wages that people like Jamie Dimon and others make in this country, but the dirty little secret is that the average wage for a bank teller in this country is $12.43. That in the state of New York, 41% of bank workers are on public assistance, and it's an absolute travesty that the wealthiest industry in this country can't figure out how to pay its workers $15 an hour. So we said, we're going to do it. The little secret was that we didn't have all that many people on $15 an hour, but we said we'd never hire anybody at less than that. We put out the challenge to the rest of the industry to do that same thing. And it's leaders on our board like Noel that give us a space to be able to do that. We take some of our profits and we give it back to working people. My friend Steve Slay, who's sitting over here, is a member of our board as well. He and I had the honor today of touring the Debs house. We came back tonight, and Steve paid me what I thought was a tremendous compliment. He said, geez, you kind of look like Eugene Debs. And then I took out this program, and I realized Steve was just telling a bald joke. Anyway, it's an honor to be here. And tonight I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my friend Jim Boland as this year's recipient of the Eugene Debs Award. Let me start with some of the perfunctory biographical information on Jim. He served as the president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers since 2010, and was just reelected to a second term as president this past September at his convention. After becoming a union member in 1977, Jim spent the next decade working on commercial projects in the San Francisco Bay Area in brick, block, stone, and marble. He became Local 3's business agent in 1988 and then president in 1992. In 1994, Jim was named to the International Union headquarters staff as an assistant to the vice president for operations, where he oversaw trade jurisdiction matters. And later that year, he was asked to take on the added field responsibilities of regional director for California and Nevada, a position he held until his election to the executive board in 1995. In addition to his responsibilities as president, President Boland serves as a co-chair of the International Masonry Institute, which is a training and industry development arm of the organized masonry industry. He's a trustee of both the International Trout Trades Pension Fund and the International Health Fund, and serves as co-chair of the Bricklayers Canadian Congress. He's also vice president of the AFL-CIO Executive Council, the chair of the Council's Immigration Committee, and a member of its International Affairs and Legislation Policy and Political Committees, as well as the newly established Labor Commission on Racial and Economic Justice. He's a member of the governing boards of the presidents of the North America's Building Trades Unions, and in addition serves on the General President's Committee on Contract Maintenance and on the National Joint Heavy and Highway Committee. Outside of the labor movement, President Boland is an at-large member of the Democratic National Committee and serves on the boards of the National Endowment for Democracy, the AFL-CIO Housing Trust, the Union Labor Life Insurance Company, and the Blue-Green Alliance. He's a 1996 graduate of the Harvard Trade Union program, makes him smart, and he attended University of College in Dublin. So that's the official biography. But I've had the pleasure of knowing Jim on a much more personal level, because he and his lovely wife, Jean, live just a couple of blocks away from me in the same neighborhood in Washington, D.C. Our daughters attended the same public high school together, and I know that Jim is a dedicated father and husband. He also happens to be one of the nicest and most principled men that I have the pleasure of knowing. When Debs himself was convicted of violating the Sedition Act, he said the following. He said, "I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. Those are the watchwords that Jim Boland has led his life by and the principles he has espoused to lead his union. It's with great honor tonight that I present the 2015 Eugene Debs Award winner, my friend, my colleague, my comrade, and my brother, Jim Boland.
Thank you very much, Pete, for those very generous sentiments. I've got 5 pages in my Jackson, so turn up the heat, huh? I am humbled and grateful beyond words to receive this award. First, I want to extend a very sincere thank you to everyone connected with the Eugene V. Debs Foundation, especially to a great leader in his own right, Noel Beasley, and the Foundation's board for this singular honor. In all candor, I can only aspire to be in the same league as the past recipients of this award. You see this in front of you. I'm in the same orbit as the award's namesake, Mr. Debs. And I would also like to recognize some fellows from my own union here. We got our wonderful Secretary-Treasurer, my colleague Henry Kramer. Our Regional Director, Steve Bailey, for our North Central Region. And the President of our local 4 Indiana, the great Ted Champ, and indeed all his field staff and their wives who were so kind to come out and support us this evening. So, good morning. Keith was kind enough to mention my beloved wife, Jean. I want to tell you she has a birthday tomorrow, but she threatened to kill me if I told you which one. But I do want to wish her a happy birthday, okay? Before today, I made many a trip to Indiana, but this is my first visit to Terre Haute. Now granted, I've been here only a matter of hours, but I had the chance to tour the Debs home and museum, and it has given me an added dimension to my appreciation of the Foundation's essential work to ensure that students, activists, and educators will continue to be inspired and motivated by this phenomenal champion of social and economic justice, not just today, but way into the future. I was born and raised in the west of Ireland, where my father, my uncles, both my grandfathers, worked all their lives on the railroad, were union members all their lives. I was fortunate to spend a few years studying bits of economics and prose at University College Dublin before emigrating here to the U.S. in the early 70s when I began my bricklaying career in Chicago and became a member eventually of the BAC local in the San Francisco area. At the time I came here, my knowledge of the history of the U.S. labor movement and progressive politics could hardly be described as vast, although I was familiar with, to some extent, of course, with the life of the Irish Republican socialist and former international workers activist James Connolly, and I think you'll all hear about him next year when we commemorate the Irish rising or revolution which brought us our freedom. So Mr. Connolly was an associate of Mr. Debs, so we came to know a little bit of his thinking in Ireland through studying the works of Connolly. My introduction to Brother Debs came oddly enough not through my exposure to trade unionism, but rather through a penchant for literature, something I would find out much later I shared with Mr. Debs' father. In reading the great John Dos Passos' 42nd Parallel, the author's first volume of his USA trilogy, which was originally published in 1930 I came across a brief, and not more than a couple of pages, of homage to Debs titled Lover of Mankind. And while I realize it may not be everyone's favorite passage, it really struck a chord with me, in part because I come from a railroad family and keyed in on Gene's early work as a locomotive fireman, like my dad, and a union official. And then, of course, there is Deb's own quote that we heard earlier this evening, and I will repeat. While there is a lower class, I am of it. While there is a criminal class, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I'm not free. Suffice to say, my interest was piqued in the time since, and that's a good number of years. I've tried to make use of every opportunity to read and learn more about the giants of the labor movement. None taller than Eugene Debs, on whose shoulders we stand as union leaders, as political mobilizers, and as economic and social coalition builders with our progressive and community partners. Again, although I would never claim to be an authority on Brother Debs or on the U.S. Socialist Party, I know without a shadow of a doubt that Eugene Debs was a man for the ages whose towering intellect and peerless oratory is surpassed only by his burning concern and compassion for the working men and women for whom he fought each and every day with every fiber of his being. In accepting this award, I pledge that I will do my utmost to honor his legacy and dedicate it to the as yet unorganized. Thank you very much for the award.